Albert Einstein knew a thing or two, didn't he?
Well, did he, though?
Yes, he did.
Come on, Vassos, pull them apart.
So obviously he was quite good at science, but he was also pretty good at philosophy, and he knew people and he knew human beings and their traits. And he said this once: stay away from negative people. They have a problem for every solution.
Yeah.
That's very nice.
How about we invite the opposite of that trait onto the air?
He's the GP who puts great podcast into general practice, and he's now become a maestro. His new BBC Maestro course, A Blueprint for Healthy Living, is available now, and he's coming back to CarFest. So if you're looking for a tip-top health strategy, have a listen to our Natterjee with the Chatterjee that Matterjees. It's Dr. Rangan Chatterjee.
Rangan Chatterjee. Rangan Chatterjee. Good morning, Rangan.
Morning. What an intro. Thanks, Vassos. I appreciate that.
Are you talking to us live from your illustrious, infamous, world-renowned podcast studio?
I am, Chris. I'm sitting in my chair. I've got all the cameras rolling, just the way like we do the show, for sure.
Okay. Just for people who don't know, who've been I don't know, on another planet for the last few years, what is your podcast? When did it start? What's it about? And give us some of your most recent highlights.
The podcast is called Feel Better, Live More. It started in January 2018. So this January, it's going to be 6 years, which I can barely believe it's been going that long. I don't know. I mean, it's very hard to choose what are some of the highlights, but recent ones, I know a conversation I had with this Buddhist monk, Geelong Tubton, who I know you enjoyed that conversation, Chris. You had Tubton on your show as well, I think a couple of weeks later. That was a wonderful conversation about what it truly means to live a happy, contented, and I guess in many ways healthy life. Mm-hmm. That was one of my favorite ones. We just dropped this morning, a few hours ago, a conversation with Shane Parrish, who, as you know, wrote this wonderful book called Clear Thinking. Yeah. And it's just a brilliant conversation about how we make better decisions and how we use rules in our life to help us make better decisions. So, yeah, I love doing the show each week. We've found out that it's just past 200 million listens since the show started, which,
whoa.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts, mate, if I'm honest. But I just feel incredible gratitude that I get to do it each week and that so many people like listening.
And also you have an in-house guru who's on the production team, your wife, who for me came up with one of the greatest affirmations, and you know this because I've talked about it on the show since you were around at ours. She said it's not about somebody's action, it's about the energy behind the action.
Yeah, I think that's an important philosophy for all of us. So, let's say alcohol, right? Many people have a love-hate relationship with alcohol. They enjoy drinking, but it makes them feel bad afterwards. Now, I think it's far too simplistic to say alcohol is either good or bad. It depends what role it's playing in your life. So this is where the energy behind the behavior becomes really important, right? So if you're drinking alcohol each night because you are disconnected in your life, you don't enjoy your job, you feel lonely, you feel isolated, and alcohol is your way of feeling less isolated, you're numbing the discomfort in your life, well, that's going to have a certain impact on you, but a very different impact if we compare that to someone who, let's say, is meeting up with their friends and likes half a glass of wine to sort of bond with their buddies or a beer or whatever it might be. The point isn't whether alcohol is good or not. It's the energy behind the behavior that determines its impact on us. And I guess, I don't know, Chris, I mean, we're talking in the middle of November, right? And we could apply that principle to health, right? So a lot of people will now be thinking, well, it's coming to a hectic part of the year. And so forget health at the moment. Let's just wait till January. Let's get through November. Let's get through the madness of December. We'll start in January. But I was thinking about this morning, Chris, and it's very much like that conversation I had with Tubton. What's the energy going on behind something? If you are pushing changing your health until January, you are getting very good at pushing things away. You're becoming an expert in saying, no, not now. My health is in the future. My happiness is in the future. But we know that simply doesn't work. So if anyone's listening, Chris, and they are thinking about getting healthy in 2024, I say, why can't you start today? What's one small thing you could do today that gets you on that journey so you're up and running when January the 1st comes by?
We're always thinking about the same things. I wrote this down to talk about on today's show, and we haven't done it so far, but you've just said it. I wrote this down literally to talk about today. If you're serious about changing your life, you'll find a way. If you're not, you'll find an excuse.
I mean, that says it all. Exactly.
Well,
exactly.
You just said it. I'm just like, that's what I wrote down. Oh, my goodness me. What about this one, Rangan? Here we go. I like it when we start doing this. A wise man said, worrying does not take away tomorrow's troubles. It takes away today's peace. Why do we worry so much, Rangan?
Well, we worry so much because it's what's kept us alive for hundreds of thousands of years. I mean, we have to remember that. There's nothing wrong with you if you're worrying. Right? I know it's almost a cliche these days, but like if you think about it, for most of our evolution as humans, you had to overreact. You had to worry. You had to know if that rustling that you heard was the wind or whether it was a predator in the bush about to attack, right? So you are rewarded for overly worrying, for being anxious. So that's why we've got it. It just so happens that many of us today, not all of us I recognize, but many of us are living in relatively safe environments. So that negativity bias that helped us so beautifully for 99% of our evolution doesn't help us today. We struggle today and it makes us anxious. We ruminate about things. We can't live in the present moment because we're too worried about what's happened in the past or what happens tomorrow. So that's one of the reasons. Another thing I think it's useful for people to reflect on is the quality of their sleep, Chris, because we know that sleep deprivation, for example, and we know that, on average, people are sleeping 1 to 2 hours less than they were 60 years ago, which is utterly remarkable. But when you sleep 5 hours a night compared to 8 hours a night, there's a part of your brain called the amygdala, which is the emotional part of your brain, that can be up to 50% more active. Just think about that. So if you're not sleeping well, and I get that some people find it hard and they've got young children or they've got a lot of stress in their life, but we've got to acknowledge still that if we're not sleeping well, we are going to be more anxious the following day. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. It means that actually that's a consequence of not sleeping. And so my whole approach, Chris, with patients, with the public, with anyone who asks me questions, is to help them get to the root cause of their problems. And for many people, the root cause is the fact that they're not sleeping enough. And so, it's not going to be for everyone, but that's some of my sort of top line thoughts on why so many of us worry all the time, basically.
Pretty good top line thoughts. I've had just an idea while you're speaking there, Rangan, because you are in front of
a real perfectionist. I still have those tendencies, but I've let go of a lot of them. It's interesting. I spoke to Adam Grant last week, the psychologist, Chris, who we haven't released it yet. It comes out in a couple of weeks on my podcast.
Can't wait for that one, by the way.
But it was an awesome conversation. And at the end, Adam did something to me. I don't know if my wife is going to keep this in the show. We'll take it out, actually, because at the end, Adam does something that he does when he's writing books, when he's with his students. He asks them for feedback. So at the end of the show, we finish, we've said bye-bye, and he goes, okay, Rangan, how did I do? I was like, I thought, what? I'm going to critique the world-famous Professor Adam Grant on my show. So I felt really uncomfortable. But one of the things I ended up saying to him is that, because he said, Rangan, what could I have done better? And I said, Adam, listen, this couldn't have gone any better because all it could ever have been is what it was in this moment. And that's something I've learned over the years of doing podcasting, Chris, is that, you know, I used to beat myself up afterwards and go, oh, you should have asked this question. You should have asked that question. And now I think, well, the conversation I have with my guests is going to be a reflection of who they are in that moment, who I am in this moment. And it can never be any more than that. Otherwise, it would have been. So, I mean, that's quite philosophical, mate, but that's generally how I think at the moment.
That's a great answer. Because what you're saying is, in the moment, the questions weren't there to be asked.
Yeah.
Love it.
And I think it's a great approach to all of us in our life, right? All we're doing is the best that we can. And that's all we can do. And, 2 questions I often ask my patients to ask themselves each night are, what went well today? And what can I do differently tomorrow? And they're so simple, but so powerful, because it just means on a daily basis, in a very compassionate way, you're reflecting and learning about yourself. It could be, what went well today? Well, I'm knackered. I was super stressed at work. I got back late, but I still found time to cook my family a home-cooked meal, for example. And then what can I do better tomorrow? It might be, well, the reason I was knackered was because I stayed up watching Netflix too late. And so I was exhausted all day. So I had higher stress. I had too much caffeine. I had too much sugar. Tonight, you know what? I'm not going to watch that second episode of the box set. I'll stop after 1. And if people just ask themselves those 2 questions each day, you'll find in a few weeks, you'll be like a different person, but not because you beat yourself up, because you just very compassionately help yourself look at your life and look at it a little bit differently.
Amazing. We talked about that at the beginning of this week and at the end of last week. Instead of trying to stay on top of things, get to the bottom of things and discover the routes that lead to an upward spiral.
Yeah, I love that. Hey, Chris, can I just talk about CarFest for a second?
Sure you can.
Because I was thinking about CarFest this morning, and I knew I was coming on to talk to you today.
Yes.
And I asked my kids before they went to school, I said, hey, look, I'm talking to Chris in about an hour. You looking forward to CarFest next year? And they both had big smiles on their face. They were like, yeah, absolutely. I said, okay, what is it you like about CarFest? And they both said the same thing. They said the atmosphere. And it was really interesting. I didn't know what they were going to say. I didn't know if they were going to say the bands or the young driving, the young drivers thing that they did last year. But it was the atmosphere. And I think if someone hasn't been to CarFest, I don't think they realize just how powerful the atmosphere is, how happy and supportive the community is. And let's even look at that through the lens of health, because with health, we often think about, food and movement and sleep and stress, and those things are really important. But human connection, right, with people who are not our family or our friends, that's very important. But strangers, being around other people who are strangers, who are into similar things as you are, it's actually really, really important for your health. There was this wonderful 2021 study by these psychologists, Chris, that basically said positive interactions with strangers help us serve basic needs such as feeling connected, appreciated, along perhaps with the realization of personal growth in ourselves. Now, that is so relevant because in this increasingly digitized world where we work from home, we're on Zooms, we can do yoga now on YouTube in our house, so we don't actually need to go to a class anymore. There is something so powerful about going to events, being around other people in these communities. And I just wanted to add that I think there's a health benefit for people to go to CarFest as well as an enjoyment one.
Depends on what you get up to. But if you hang around with you, Rangan, it's probably going to be the former. I didn't mention what the latter might be, but I think people could probably imagine it was that for many years. Not anymore. CarFest.org for tickets to do with what Rangan's talking about. So I had this idea while you were talking, Rangan, about the fact that, what can we do again next year that we haven't done before? I think we could go with a Rangan Chatterjee ARA, Ask Rangan Anything, but you just pop up and we do like 1 or 2 sessions per day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Maybe we have a mass Dr. Rangan surgery in front of the main stage for half an hour. And we just literally, no preamble from us, get straight into the questions because you answer them so eruditely and so infinitely wisely. This is what I'm saying. I think you're speaking from beyond your own wisdom and your own experience and your own training, which is why you've just achieved guru status. I think you reconfirmed it, by the way. You have to reconfirm it since I announced it a few moments ago.
Well, Chris, listen, I'm up for anything at CarFest. I love it. And I just love being on stage. I love talking to people. I love answering their questions. So, yeah, if you think that's going to be a good thing for people, I'd love to do it.
I'm sure we'll do whatever's there. I mean, the thing is, if you're present enough, if you put the work into being present enough, it takes the pressure off away from the moment, and then opens the moment up to which it was really for whatever it was really intended towards. And that's the feeling you get the more you relax and get in the moment. And the hard way is hard, but the easy way is harder. And if you have these practices and these rituals to get yourself into the right mindset for each and every day with this a lovely 3 or 4 or 5 minute positive mental attitude routine, the second you get out of bed, it flicks the switches in the right direction and gives you a better chance to setting off on the right road to the right destination. Whether you ever get there or not is sort of irrelevant, because it is always about the journey. But the more you can put yourself in that situation, having done all the training, all the press-ups in the car park, then the more the moment will come and meet you halfway, if not more, and deliver what it's truly meant for, along with your collaboration. Because we're all a double act, aren't we? Obviously, we have, you make your podcast with your team and with your wife, and you got your kids, and I got Rachel and Vass here in the team. But we have a permanent double act, and it's with the moment. That's it's not Morecambe and Wise, it's Morecambe in the moment. It's not Laurel and Hardy, it's Laurel in the moment. It's not Rolls and Royce, it's Rolls in the moment. It's not Vass and Chris, it's Vass in the moment. It's not Rach, Vass and Chris, it's Rach in the moment and Vass and Chris. And you know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying, Chris, and it's something that, we hear it a lot, don't we? Be in the moment, be in the moment. How are we going to do that, though? Because I'm thinking about the future, I'm ruminating on the past. And this is where daily practices come in to help you be in the moment. I know... I think it was 10 or 20 minutes ago, you were talking about taking, was it 3 deep breaths in the bathroom?
Just one to remind yourself you can,
Yeah, and I don't think people realize, certainly when I talk to patients, I don't think people realize just how powerful something like that is, because many of us are pretty much never in the moment these days. We wake up, we pick up our smartphones, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter or X, whatever it's called now. We are looking at emails. We're constantly being brought out of the moment. So even if you, for the first 5 minutes of your day, do nothing, you don't put on your phone, you just sit there, pay attention to your breath, maybe have a cup of coffee if you enjoy that, in silence, not scrolling Instagram at the same time, you start to remind yourself, well, what is the moment? Well, this is the present moment. And by doing it once, you're much more likely to do that again later in your day. And, you mentioned Vid, my wife, her mum, in her house, I think she has a green circle on the wall. I think it's green. I could have the color wrong, but a circle on the wall. And all it is for her is it's a prompt that whenever she walks past it, is to take a deep breath, get into her body, feel her feet. And I love it because we all need these little reminders to go, hey, you know what? I just need to be in the moment again. And it suddenly starts to change everything. And, next week, Chris, and you've been instrumental in helping set this up for me. So thank you. I finally have a slot with Eckhart Tolle to interview him next week for my podcast. So I literally can't wait for that. But thank you for your help with that.
No, you're welcome. I'm glad I could be of any kind of service to manifest that happening. Rangan, you're a proper pal nowadays. I can't wait to see you and your family again. You know where we live. You had the keys for a week, but thankfully you returned them. You have the keys to the kingdom of this CarFest. Thanks for your support. Have a great day. Have a great week, and love to the fam.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
Okay, he's the best. It's good, isn't he?
Yeah,
Right? He was always good anyway. He's taking it up again, don't you think?
Absolutely.